Hello guys, welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast by Dedicated Spartan, presented by me, of course, yours truly. And today we're going to talk about Prime Luke Rockhold. Now the way the Let's Talk podcast works is I'll take a subject, it could be a fighter, it could be something political, and then I break it down honestly, objectively, and non-biasedly. So, stay tuned to the end of the video to see what the next episode is going to be about. Now we're going to talk about Prime Luke Rockhold. Now, some people might ask, what is Prime Luke Rockhold? You know, he hasn't retired yet, he might come out and hit a new prime. Or not new prime, but his actual prime. He might be a late bloomer. We don't know. But for most people, the Rockhold that was very, very good with the Strikeforce Rockhold that went through the division, got the belt, defended it 2 times. And then there was the early Rockhold in the UFC who never went the distance and finished everybody they put in front of him. He had 2 first-round finishes, which were very good. Then he had 2 second-round finishes, which were equally as great. He had what could have been a 3rd-round stoppage against Chris Weidman for the title. Turned out to be a 4th-round stoppage. So he was finishing everybody they put in front of him. Now, what was the difference between Strikeforce Rockhold and UFC Rockhold? Because there was a small gap in there. The Rockhold that showed up to fight Vitor Belfort was pretty much somewhat of that same Rockhold. And then the one that went on a tear through the division and was just destroying everyone they put in front of him, that Rockhold was a little different. What changed? And if you look at this, you know, these 2 clips of Rockhold, or these 2 pictures, one here and one here, what do you see the difference here? There's a lot more muscle mass on the Rockhold that was in the UFC, destroying everybody, than the Rockhold that was in Strikeforce, doing pretty much the same thing. Now, his style of fighting is kind of hard to put him in a category. He was in between the in-and-out fighter and that slight pressure kickboxer type style fighter. You know, in some ways, similar to the way Nick Diaz fought, just with more focus on kicking and kickboxing as opposed to just regular stand-up boxing. He had great jiu-jitsu. He was not necessarily a wrestler. He had grappling. He would use his takedown defense very effectively. The fights that really showed how good he was his fight against, against Tim Kennedy, who a lot of people, I believe Luke Thomas believed that was the best Tim Kennedy he's ever seen, correct me if I'm wrong. And then his fight against Jacare Souza for the belt. Now, I do think 50-45 was a bit too far when the people scored that fight for Rockhold. Close fight, I do see why Rockhold won it. I do feel why some people thought he stole the round that he did on the judges' scorecards, because some things are down to opinion. You know, to the judge, if the fight is back and forth and you haven't been dominated, and at the end of the last, minute, 40-second time, you throw a flurry at the end, they can give you that round based upon their opinion. They feel that you didn't have to steal the round. Now, there have been some times where this happened, and people thought it was legit. Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor, too. No one argues that Nate stole that round in the last 44 seconds. Robbie Lawler versus Roy McDonald, too. Nobody argues that Robbie, except for me a little bit, that, I said Robbie, that Rory stole the 3rd round with that head kick followed up by those flurry of punches and that combination that landed. Even though Robbie fought back pretty good in that exchange. But nobody argued that he stole those rounds, that those 2 guys stole those rounds. But when we come to Rockhold against Souza, the first 2 rounds that one judge gave to Rockhold, you could argue should not have been given to him. I believe that Jacare did a whole lot more damage against Rockhold in the first round, especially. He knocked him back to the cage. I don't remember if it was the first or the second round when he dropped him, but I know that he drops Rockhold in that fight. And, in that fight, people even said Rockhold had a good chin. Like I said, something you never hear them say now, which means that it had to be tested in order for them to say that. There's a reason they said he had a good one. So, that Rockhold was comfortable inside of 5 rounds, performed well inside of 5 rounds, and he was very emotional when he won the Strikeforce title. Jacare never got over that loss. When he was in the UFC, he said that he wanted to fight Rockhold again because he felt the judges gave him that decision that he didn't deserve. He felt he'd done enough. And I could see why he felt that way, because to me, the fight was pretty close. There was a slight edge towards Rockhold on his outward kickboxing. You know, he was doing some pretty good damage. But in terms of the first 2 rounds, not going to Jacare, I think that, to me, it was a bit of a robbery, because Jacare was clearly controlling the space, clearly controlling the distance, and clearly doing the more damage. You know, he knocked Luke across the cage. He dropped him in the fight, like I said, and then when Luke was in the defensive position, he wasn't able to get off any offense when he had him pinned against the cage, and he was just dropping bombs on his face. His face was there to be hit. Now, the Rockhold that fought Tim Kennedy, I gave most of those rounds to Rockhold. He did extremely good in that fight. Stuffing all the takedowns, getting his back off the cage, putting Kennedy in bad positions, taking Kennedy to the ground, and dealing ground and pound against him. That was very, very good version of Rockhold. So, you know, what changed there? Well, when he came to the UFC, he didn't, when he fought at first, he fought very similar to this Carlos Condit style of fighting, but he had much better balance. You know, Carlos does a whole lot of movement. It looks sloppy, you know. My coach and I, we call it, you know, sometimes it's like a ugly artist, you know, because he doesn't keep balance. He threw himself off balance all the time with a lot of his punches and a lot of his kicks. But hey, I mean, he found a way to make it work. A whole lot of finishes on his record. Almost knocked out GSP when he threw that, you know, 3-punch combo upstairs and then disguised that round kick that he dropped on GSP. You know, he almost finished GSP in that fight. But Rockhold had a very similar style to it. You know, he would throw a few punches, not a whole lot of jabs. He used his jabs to set up a few things, but for the most part, it was his kickboxing that a lot of people were afraid of. And against Kennedy, you know, he was landing some good kicks. He landed some wheel kicks. He threw some axe kicks in that fight. Question mark kick. That was pretty much Rockhold's signature move, his go-to move. I hope when he comes back we see some more of that. But when he came to the UFC, he was a bit more stationary with his movement. He didn't. It wasn't that he stopped using footwork. Footwork was always his biggest defense. People ask, well, how come he gets hit? He always preferred footwork to head movement or to blocking. You know, he didn't use a whole lot of blocking. It was all about getting in and getting out. But Strikeforce Rockhold, we saw more circular motion with him. You know, he'd move in a pattern similar to this to cut his opponent off. You know, he goes side to side, a lot more lateral movement. The one that came to the UFC, even in the beginning, it was more so in and out movement that we saw from him. When he fights Michael Bisping in the rematch, when he puts his leg up to block him, you saw that he was moving backwards. He wasn't trying to move to the side or change angles or move diagonally. When he knocked out Philip Costa with that liver kick, same thing. Back and forth, in and out. I really, really like what he did in that fight, you know, to set up those kicks, because he started off timing his opponent and waiting for him to leave himself an opening. And what Rockhold would do was, he's actually a pretty good counter striker. A lot of people think that counter striking only happens when someone throws his punch and you throw a punch at the same time and yours lands, or you throw a kick at the same time as theirs and yours lands. Not necessarily. That is extremely elite counter striking. I'm not saying Rockhold's not elite. But one thing that he would do really well is, people would get out there and they would throw their jabs. He did this in the fight against Costa. He would throw his jab, and as their jab or their punch was coming back, he would read the opening on them. If the body was open, then he'd throw something low. He wouldn't throw it extremely hard. He'd throw that setup. He'd throw it nice and soft. And then, when they did it again, and they came back, they were more comfortable, and they were even more exposed than they were the first time, he let the power shot loose. That's how he set up that liver kick knockout against his man, Costas. Or Costas, I'm probably saying his name wrong. But that's how he got that liver kick set up. He would wait for him to return to a comfortable spot, throw something nice and soft at first, down low. Then he worked the body up a little bit. Then he landed more than one liver kick in that fight. So that is what Rockhold would do. He would examine, he would find the opening, and then he would capitalize on you leaving yourself exposed. And that's not so easy to do. So I understand why he said that he felt he was better than a lot of the guys in the division. But, you know, here's the thing as to why I respect Luke. He was willing to back that up. He didn't call people out and then try to run away from fighting them. When the fights came, he took them. And that's why I give him the respect. Because he called those guys out right after he defended his Strikeforce belt. And then went and fought all of them. Yeah, Vitor Belfort knocked him out, but then he beat Tim Bosch, then he beat Costa Phillip, finished Philippou, finished both of those guys. Lyoto Machida, Michael Bisping, Chris Weidman. He finished all of them. He had 2 first-round finishes, 2 second-round finishes. Then he had what could have been a 3rd-round finish against Weidman, but it was a 4th-round finish. Herb Dean let Weidman fight his heart out. But the point is, when Luke called him out, he fought him. A lot of people call a lot of people out, and they don't crawl or go on a rampage through the division and just drop body bag everybody. A couple guys have done that. Israel Adesanya clean out his division, same division as Rockhold, middleweight. He's had some title defenses, so not a whole lot of people have done that in the sport. In a lot of organizations, that hasn't happened. In some cases, against top-notch guys or against veteran fighters. And remember, here's the thing: a lot of the guys, except for Weidman, who Rockhold was facing, had way more fights than he had. So prime Luke Rockhold. I do believe that he still has something left in him. I really, really hope that he has been training with Khabib, because he already had excellent grappling. He already had good takedown defense. If he can add the wrestling to it, he will have an extremely offensive threat in his grappling. In a lot of cases, he used it for defense. People would shoot in for him. He wasn't shooting in for the takedown, and he would reverse the position, roll him back. That's all good. But if he's training with Khabib, he's going to have an offensive game, really like no one other, because he's already good at it. And here's the thing about Rockhold, he's a stubborn person. And you can be stubborn in a good way, refusing to quit when you're learning a new task. I believe it was his brother who said when they were younger, his dad would tell him not to do certain stuff, otherwise you're going to get a spanking, or you're going to get, grounded. Punishment is going to come upon you. And he said he would go and do it anyway, and then walk in, take his punishment, and then go right back and do it again, take his punishment again. So in that case, it's a bad thing. But when you're trying to learn something new, especially if you're at the gym, that's a good thing. Like, okay, I messed up. Let me go back and look at this, see what I did wrong, and do it the right way. So I believe that when he was on that tear through the division, he was able to apply that same attitude in a positive manner. When you fight, the real you comes out. Who you really are comes out in a fight. It's easy to sucker punch somebody. It's easy to jump somebody. There's no difficulty, there's no challenge in that. But when you stand face to face with someone else who's been preparing months and years specifically to destroy you in front of them and fight them one-on-one, that is a real test of who you really are. The real you is going to come out no matter what. You can't hide it, even if you want to. If you're a coward, it's going to come out. If you're brave, it's going to come out. If you're strong, it's going to come out. If you're weak, it's going to come out. If you've got, an unbreakable will, all that's going to come out in the way you fight. And so, Rockhold was tested when he fought Weidman. He was coming off of injuries. He was high on antibiotics and went in there and fought, even though he was exhausted. He was tested when he went on his tear through the division, because, he showed up in his debut and got knocked out in the first round by Vitor Belfort. So, things like that. He came through that, so he has been tested before. People, John Jones said it very well when he said people have short-term memories in this sport, and they forget what the person was good at. So I look forward to seeing Luke fight again. I hope he doesn't get hurt. I don't want to see any of those, Chuck Liddell, Tito type fights. But I do believe he still has some good things left in him, and like I said, especially if he's been working with Khabib, then maybe we'll see a more offensive style of his grappling. So, thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next one.